Wendy Knowler. Lovely to have you with us, and I can't believe it's the last time in 2024.
No, I was about to argue with you because I always work through, and then you reminded me it's
Christmas Day, next Wednesday, and New Year's
yes.
the
So
day
this
after.
is my last of the year, and I hadn't realised it until I heard you say that.
Okay, so you can stop trying to plan next week's show immediately. Right.
Sure.
We have a very seasonally pertinent conversation today. If you are lucky enough to be flying this Christmas to go and spend the holidays with loved ones or to go somewhere exotic, this show is just for you, because we are going to be looking at how our domestic airlines respond to and deal with lost or damaged luggage, what happens if something is stolen from your luggage, a couple of do's and don'ts to consider when packing and checking in your luggage, and what to do to just increase the chances of it arriving at the same destination as you at the same time. There is nothing worse than that feeling of watching the carousel go round and round and round and your bag not appearing. It has happened to me a couple of times, Wendy. To be fair, the airlines have always solved the issue and got the luggage to me where I was after that. But it's such a sinking feeling to be...
Yeah, that hasn't happened to me, but I've had my bags pilfered.
Okay.
Nothing taken, which brings me to the first thing not to do, and that is don't pack your branded perfume into your check-in luggage, because that's the number one item that they're looking for. So I think I've mentioned this before.
Yes.
I had a pair of one of my most prized pieces of footwear, some Doc Martens.
Yes.
Size 4, mind you. Maybe they aren't in demand in size 4,
no,
but they stayed there. They were totally overlooked, and they just rifled through my toiletry bag. And I know from my work that perfume is so, keep it in your handbag or in your carry-on luggage. Do not pack it.
So this is where it pays to, when you're buying your expensive perfume, buy the version that's got the travel-sized bottle in the kit with it,
Yes,
because obviously there are restrictions on how much you can carry in your hand luggage.
Well, it's 100 mils, and you'd have to be quite wealthy to get 100 mils of the very top
so
stuff. Most of it will not be part of
would
those
be within limit.
restrictions.
Okay,
Yeah.
but if you have got a ginormous bottle of something special, get yourself a travel-sized one so that you can keep it in your hand luggage.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the number one stolen item from checked-in luggage is expensive branded perfume. Wendy, the other thing you can do to make sure that the chance of your bag arriving at your destination with you is increased is the simplest thing of removing your old baggage stickers from the luggage. And you get back from holiday, while you're unpacking, you sometimes pull off one or two. You obviously take the big one off the handle, but it's very easy to miss the one stuck on the back of the bag from a previous trip.
And some people, I've been lucky enough to do a tour of the I don't know if it's lucky is the right word, but of OR Tambo's baggage sorting area, which is massive. There's an international section and there's a domestic section. And a lot of the cases you see there, especially the ones that are now homeless, lost, have multiple stickers on them. And the person that I was with said that for some travelers, it's clearly a sort of a trophy thing. This is how often I've traveled, but it's silly because you're going to confuse the sorting system. Of course, 2 days from now, last year, the last Friday before Christmas, which is the number one day for people traveling for Christmas, the baggage sorting system at ORT failed.
I remember that.
And that caused the biggest drama with, that scenario you were talking about of standing at the carousel and the luggage not coming. That happened to thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
Do you remember we covered the story of MSC, shipping
company?
Yes.
Cruises,
there was a bunch of people flying from Joburg to Durban to get the trip to the cruise to Mozambique, I think, over Christmas, and many of their passengers, they delayed the cruise, and many of their passengers still didn't have their luggage, and they made a plan. I think the airline, Flysafair, I think, got the bags to Maputo.
Oh gosh!
But they were on a remote island. They hired a little plane and got all the luggage. It was a really nice Christmas story.
I didn't hear that part of it, but I had a similar experience, because the one time it happened to me where one of our bags arrived and the other one just simply didn't make it onto the plane and was left behind. We were moving. We had flown to Paris, and then from Paris we're going into the remotest section of the Canal du Midi down south below Toulouse, and on a moving vessel. So to say to them, where are you going to be next? We don't know. We're on a barge holiday. The whole point is to be able to potter and stop where you want to and maybe spend the night here. They managed to get that bag to us on a boat in the middle of the Canal du Midi within probably 20 hours.
That is really
which I thought was quite
dedication.
impressive. That was Air France, I think. Yeah. So okay,
So those are
so
good news stories.
remove the old stickers. Don't
then-
put the perfume in.
Yes, and I went on a bit of a tour there of what I was running. My point was that you also need a physical tag if the baggage sorting system fails, because those little barcodes are going to help. So have a tag. You don't have to put your address there. You could put an email address if you want to put a cell number, but at least put an email address there and your name, so that they can, reunite you with your bag if all else fails. So I would say don't rely just on those little electronic tags.
Okay.
And then we're going to be talking about damaged baggage and other things that go wrong with baggage. And I just think it's also fair to say don't buy the cheapest baggage if you're intending to check it in. That baggage is subjected to
quite a lot.
rather strenuous set of processes there. There are some drops. There is a lot going on, and that rose gold hard shell suitcase may look fair, but it's most likely very brittle. Doesn't have give. It can crack or break, crack under pressure. If they've got poor quality wheels, there's more chance that as they go around those corners, they just snap off. I saw a lot of wheels lying underneath the equipment when I was there. So just play your part and invest in some sturdy luggage to just increase the chances or decrease the chances of something bad happening to your luggage.
Okay, and before we talk about what happens if something bad does happen to your luggage, I believe we've received a voice note speaking to the issue of the tags and identification on luggage. Let's take a listen.
Pippa, can we suggest to people that travel to put their name not only outside on the handle, maybe in a special tag or something, also a piece of paper with full name and contact details inside the suitcase? Because I remember once that my suitcase went astray because the tag fell off and they couldn't find me. Lucky I had something inside the suitcase, because they opened it, they tried to find me, and lucky they found the details by chance. Since then I learned it's a piece of paper with your name. It can solve a lot of problems later in the future. Just in case. It's silly, Kemspe.
Silly, thanks. That is actually very
That's so
sound
lovely.
advice.
Yes, that too can get ripped off, I guess.
But
the tag.
inside the bag, so inside your locked bag, hopefully.
I would just
but
tape it
yeah.
to the inside of it if it's a hard shell somewhere on the inside.
You're reminding me of the other luggage anomaly we had, where somebody had the same suitcase as my husband and took ours and left theirs behind. We're going back years and years before we had social media, before we had WhatsApp or anything like that. And the only way we had to identify that person, because it was late at night, there was nobody left at luggage service or anything like that, was to open the bag. And thankfully we found, it was a real piece of sleuthing, Wendy. We found there was a wrapped present inside with somebody's name, Matthew or whatever it was, on the tag. And there was also an address book. So we went through the address book, finding Matthew.
You won't find those in today's luggage.
And literally phoned, and thankfully the first phone call was to a Matthew. It's sort of a very strange question, but are you expecting a visitor, and do you have a birthday coming up? And they went, yes. And we like, well, before. And thank heavens we did, because they were driving from Joburg to Nelspruit. It would have been a 4-hour trip back to find the bag.
And you got yours back.
We got ours back in the yard. We did a quick swap. So there we go. Okay, of course, ideally you shouldn't be able to open the bag, though, to find that information, Wendy. So what do you do? Anyway.
Well, yes, I suppose
if your bag was properly locked.
What our listener was saying, also if it's in the if it's in the possession of the airline, you're hoping it'll be safe. Open.
Hopefully,
not for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
Well, bringing us neatly to our case study today of what happens if the baggage is not handled correctly or is damaged in transit or lost, etc. What are our rights? What can we expect from the airlines in terms of compensation? And should we start with the case study, Wendy?
Yes, this was a case study that I got a few months ago, and I thought I'm going to keep it for this time of year to talk about these baggage issues. So Alan Smith travels regularly for work within the sub-Saharan African region, usually via Airlink. He wrote to tell us what happened in July when he arrived at OR Tambo on his Airlink flight home from Nairobi. He was horrified to discover when he picked up his large 1-year-old Thule suitcase, which he had paid 10,000 Rand for as an investment, because thinking it was going to be particularly sturdy, whatever. he got to the carousel and the bag got there, but it had a large hole at the back of the case. So it's quite a rigid plastic. And it literally penetrated all the way through. Who knows what happened to it. But it was essentially rendered useless with that kind of penetration. It's been completely compromised from all sorts of things. He reported to the airline, as one does, and he was told that he'd have to submit a claim, a part of which required him to produce a receipt for the bag, which he no longer had. 6 weeks later, he was told, sorry, you don't have the receipt. There is no claim. And he said to me, I find it very unreasonable to expect customers to keep receipts in perpetuity in case their property is damaged. And I did put it to the airline when I took up the case, and I think this strikes me with respect as just a stumbling block to just as a means
make
to
it
say,
hard.
I mean,
make people give up.
No, this is an issue, theft of luggage in the airline. Like, really, your person's checked it in. You've got a direct link between the person and the bag. I mean, it just seems really silly. Anyway, so as I say, when I took up the case, their response was to point me to their conditions of carriage and then to tell me that they had offered Alan 1,500 Rand as a gesture of goodwill on a 10,000 Rand now.
That's not going to cause a lot of goodwill in my book,
And then they said, because I was challenging them, I said, you've got the Consumer Protection Act, which clearly states that if a company has a possession of a customer's property, if it is damaged in some way due to the failure to take appropriate, diligent care of it, then they are liable for any losses, right? So they say, Airlink said, we recently dealt with a similar matter resulting in further engagement with the IATA, the International Air Transport Association, which all the airlines take their direction from in terms of legalities, but actually, as we'll hear in a minute, the CPA takes precedence. Trumps, exactly. That's a good word. And we spoke to our legal team to establish the liabilities around our baggage conditions and whether anything within our baggage conditions is unfair, unreasonable, or unjust, or otherwise prohibited in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. And as of June this year, after requesting confirmation from IATA reps, it was confirmed that for international carriage, compliance requirements are set by international treaties that countries are parties to, but that loss needs to be proved by the passenger and therefore receipts may be requested. And they're going to make their limits of liability in their terms and conditions more clear to passengers in this regard. And they're saying, everything is above board according to them.
So they say our policy is correct. It's illegally compliant. IATA says it is so. So we've done what we needed to do for Alan. Alan obviously didn't feel that was an adequate response.
He said, because they said we've reached a mutual agreement with our passenger, and as consumers often do, and I go back to them, they said hardly. That was the most that they were willing to pay, and then they said if he wants to pursue it through the baggage handlers, their maximum was 2,500, but he didn't have the appetite for any further fight. He says she went on about some international conventions, Warsaw and Montreal, that they need to comply with, and that their maximum liability is 1,500 Rand. Imagine telling an aggrieved customer about the Warsaw Convention on baggage claims. Lol. And anyway, the Warsaw these two conventions put the maximums at a lot more than 1,500 Rand. So that's their own limitation, nothing to do with those conventions.
Okay.
But yes, as for lolling, it really isn't a laughing matter when you consider what legal protection we're supposed to have in this kind of situation. So I shared the case with Cape Town-based consumer rights attorney and friend of the show, Trudy Brookman, asking whether those two conventions covering baggage issues on international flights, it's only international, though you will have airlines on occasion trotting them out to cover baggage issues on domestic flights. Mm-hmm. She says, as I've just said, that our Consumer Protection Act at Section 65.2c, if anyone wants to look it up, it renders a supplier liable to the owner for any loss resulting from the supplier's failure to safeguard the property and handle it with care, diligence, and skill. Those are the words: care, diligence, and skill. In other words, appropriately. Mm-hmm. Her response is any 1,500 cap which an airline may seek to impose via contract will be invalid and illegal according to Section 51.3 of the Consumer Protection Act, which says that it supersedes those conventions. The full replacement value is payable if the airline damages one's luggage.
Sure.
According to the Constitution, the international agreements apply unless they are inconsistent with an act of Parliament like the Consumer Protection Act. So the CPA will override any limitation in the Warsaw or Montreal Conventions. And again, those only apply anyway to international flights if there's an international link. Out of my prep now, because I shared with you off air that I had some technical issues, I did also seek an opinion from the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman, Lee Subrati, who also said very much brought up that relevant section of the CPA and said that it is a case-by-case basis, but that is the law that they turn to in deliberating, while bearing in mind these international conventions, the CPA does have sway. So they corroborate it.
So if you're flying into or out of South Africa or within South Africa, the CPA is the king. The king of the top of the pile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So then that 1,500 Rand limit, which Airlink was referring to with Alan, is something that Airlink has decided for themselves.
Interestingly, and this has been the case the entire time that I've certainly been a consumer journalist, those conventions, or the Montreal Convention, and this is what all the airlines do, they locally or domestically or internationally, they use the $20 per kilogram thing.
Okay.
And the limit is, when you convert it to Rand, is 26,000, which might seem like a lot, but mostly it's not going to be the full
amount that you get paid.
Well, especially if something's Pulford, think about it. It's not going to weigh, it could weigh 500 grams, and then you're going to get less than $20
in
could
compensation.
be very expensive, yeah. And bags as well. It depends, empty, how much would the bag
be valued?
It's
How
not
much
going to
would it
be
weigh?
15 kilograms. So you're going to get a lot less than that. Let's
Okay,
see.
so did Trudy say anything about Alan's case specifically? Did she
Yes.
think it's worth him fighting on it?
She agreed with me about the requirement that you have to provide the receipt for your baggage, although I would say it's always a good idea to keep that particular slip. It was even just for proving, for other reasons, for warranty and whatever. But anyway, she says it is up to consumers to prove their claim, and that would include that the luggage was theirs. But this is normally inferred from the fact that he checked in, and further proof is unnecessary unless the airline can produce evidence to the contrary. So the onus is on them to say this isn't your bag. If you've got if you checked it in and you got the sticker on your case, that is just nonsense, as I've said. Then she says, interestingly, IATA is not qualified to advise on the legal relationship of a South African consumer with a South African airline. There, the CPA governs the relationship. And she's basically said Airlink has, regardless of whether they've taken more steps to alert consumers, that's still the case that the CPA trumps it. And that's pretty much it. So the IATA doesn't cover, and the bottom line is it's the CPA.
You also spoke to some of our other local airlines.
I did. I spoke to Lyft.
Yeah.
I said to all of them, if this was your passenger and this exact bag, what would your response have been? So Lyft said, our baggage policy begins a check-in where a passenger's baggage is assessed for existing damage. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
When we recommend travellers buy baggage or travel insurance, and that's why we're going to talk insurance just now, to ensure their valuables are adequately covered. Now, that is a side issue to the CPA's requirement that they compensate you. Often people, when cars get stolen from dealerships and everything, they bring in insurance, which is a side issue. You can negotiate around there. Then we encourage customers to claim from their selected insurance. Yes, we're relevant. In the event of a passenger opting to purchase the insurance with another service provider and not with Lyft, we will provide the traveller with a file reference and letter to best assist them with this process. Baggage damage or loss is investigated when reported based on the info provided. They talk to their ground handling agent and AXA. They look at footage. They trace where and how the bag went through the system. And then comes the IATA thing. Airlines base compensation on standard IATA recommendations outlined in the IATA Baggage Reference Manual. This is the guide for airlines which covers different international conventions that determine the amounts for claims. Now, they're flying, as far as I know, they don't fly internationally. So those conventions don't apply. And yes, it's $20 per kilogram, up to 23 kilograms in weight, in the unlikely event of a full bag that is completely lost or completely damaged. Excludes valuable items and electronics, as they always do. But as we said before we went to the breaks, it's the CPA applies, number one, and even if there is an international leg, you're flying to Zanzibar, Mauritius, or whatever, those conventions are trumped by the CPA.
Because the flood originated in South Africa.
Yeah, but this is something that is going to continue. You're going to have to go to an ombudsman or to a provincial consumer court to get justice if you feel very strongly, and I would really strongly advise that people do that.
And fight it, yeah.
And fight this, because there's no legal basis for it. It's a convention that they've all adopted.
And they are all uniformly, all the other airlines are telling you the same thing.
Yeah.
Wendy, you spoke to Safair as well.
Safair didn't trot out the conventions, but if you look at their terms and conditions, they say, our liability in the case of damage to checked baggage, lost or stolen, shall be limited to $20 per kilogram, not the monetary value. The maximum value of checked baggage as a whole shall be limited to $400 per passenger. So they're all doing it. I spoke to SAA, and here's something interesting, Pippa. SAA, because as I said, the question I asked was, how would you have handled this case? So they say we would open a damage baggage file, send the bag to a repair shop to evaluate. If it can't be repaired, if it can be, we do it. We pay for it. If it can't, we will request a replacement. But we do not replace Thule due to the cost of these bags. I mean, there must be others.
Ooh.
Interesting. If the customer does not accept the type of bag we will be replacing with, we will follow the claims route. Claim form must be completed. A receipt will be requested. Depending, this is the really interesting part, depending on whether the customer is traveling in business or economy class, we will compensate either $3,500 if you're in business, if you were in business, and $2,500 for the bag.
But it's
How'd
the
you like that?
same bag on the same
bag.
airplane. The bag isn't sitting in a comfortable seat. It's going in the same hold as the rest of the luggage.
And it was damaged in the same
in the same process. Why on earth should there be a difference in compensation?
There you go. And then we do investigate to see where the baggage was damaged, and if it's obvious that the ground handler dropped it due to mishandling, we pay out in full and penalise the ground handler. But then you've got to rely on there being footage. What the customer must also remember is that with travel, the baggage gets nicked and scuffed in the sortation system, so we can't pay our 10,000 Rand for a bag that is 5 years old and has travelled around the world. Well, they wouldn't anyway. We also have customers claiming for Rimowa bags just to find out that it's a fake brand.
So it was a fake brand name luggage, so a
Yes.
fake Thule,
Okay,
that they paid 200 Rand for, not 10,000.
Yes, and as I said earlier, don't go for the cheapest baggage. And I do think that's a little unfair. It's the manufacturer's issue with these really fragile little tiny wheels that just look like they'll snap if you look at them too long, kind of thing. It's a difficult area.
On that note, Judy would like your advice. Do you consider a hard case or a soft case to be a better option?
Depends on the hard case. The cheaper one's not a good idea, because I've seen those, and I've been people who work in this area have said to me rather a sturdy other kind of bag, fabric, whatever, than a cheap hard shell that is prone to burst. That's the other thing. Don't overpack a hard shell, because if they have a bit of a drop, which they do in these sortation systems, the chance of them bursting are quite high.
Okay, consider that. Judy, thanks for your comment. All right, now, all of which tells us your chances of getting all the joy and compensation you want or expect from the airline
without a legal fight
are limited,
Yeah.
which is why it's yet another reason why the concept of travel insurance comes into play here. And with us on the line is Christelle Coleman, CEO of AMI Underwriting Managers, part of the Lombard Insurance Group, and somebody we've also had on the show many a time. Christelle, it's lovely to have you back again, and thank you. You've been waiting so patiently to join the conversation. Welcome back.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Given that what we've heard, most airlines will compensate to a degree, but it's nowhere near the degree that the passenger would like or hope for if their luggage is lost or damaged or stolen from. What's your recommendation in terms of insurance cover to ameliorate your losses in a case like this?
Okay, well, Pippa, I'm sorry, I'm hearing music playing. Am I supposed to hear music playing?
You should not be hearing music playing, no, which is very odd.
Okay,
So let me put you back to my producer and just see if we can drop that call and call you back again. In the meantime, let's take a listen to a voice note that's come through from one of our listeners who's had some luggage experience of the kind we've been discussing, and then we'll loop back to Christelle after that.
Hello, Pippa. If anything goes wrong with the Samsonite bag in the UK, There's a shop at 285 Oxford Street, London, where they will fix bags or replace pull tags, as in the case of my husband when he travelled to the UK 2 weeks ago.
That's good to know.
I've made a note. 285 Oxford Street.
Okay.
That's really a lovely consumer hack. And clearly, it has to be a Samsonite bag because that's a Samsonite shop. But many people, myself included, use that brand. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the tip, Nazima. Okay, we have located the music and quieted the music. Christelle, welcome back.
Thank you, Pippa. It's a house full of kids, so
say no more.
There wasn't interference.
Okay.
Yes, you were asking about insurance options.
Yeah.
So before we get to that, I just want to say I have found the perfect hack
Yeah.
for not losing or getting, and I travel overseas quite a bit, so more than twice a year. And about a number of years ago, I decided to challenge myself to travel only with hand luggage, and I've been successful in doing that. Last year I went over Christmas. I do a capsule wardrobe. I take my coat with me. And yes, it's possible if you're prepared to do a little bit of washing in between.
Okay.
And then you don't have to fear
Agreed.
anything.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Okay, Wendy's.
People are amazed when I say.
Yeah, and people are always amazed. But especially if you lucky enough, as I'm going to be next month, to stay with people friends, and that you can just
throw a load of laundry on. Yeah.
Throw a load of laundry on. Or can I borrow that coat? Or the stuff that's not going to be actually on your skin. It's easy to borrow that stuff.
Yeah, or an Airbnb. The first thing I do is I buy wonderful European washing powders and stuff, and I just wash my clothes. But let's get on to the serious topic of insurance.
Appreciate the hack, though. Thank you. Right, on to the issue of insurance.
That really works. Yes, so when you travel either locally or internationally, let's talk about local travel first. So if you travel locally, most people will never take out travel insurance. Travel insurance really is for international travel. But the risk is there whether you go to Cape Town from Joburg or you go overseas. So if we look at local travel, if the airline is not going to compensate you for the damaged, adequately for the damaged or lost luggage, you would be able to claim under your personal all risks cover under your home insurance policy. Obviously, you need to have adequate cover there to make sure that you are properly insured. And just a note of warning around personal all risks insurance. I've had claims where people try and claim for a Rolex watch checked in. Now, it's not electronic goods, but, we expect our clients to take a measure of care commensurate to the value of the item that they are letting go, So you can't be without care for your items and just go, I don't mind. I've got insurance. I'm checking this thing in. If it goes missing, we'll get paid out. So if you are going to be traveling locally, make sure that you have adequate personal insurance, personal or risk insurance. That will also cover you when you travel internationally. So when you travel internationally, you would take out most people take out travel insurance. Don't rely just on the credit card insurance. Take out a policy. It's not expensive. And your travel insurance will then typically cover you for your medical, any medical condition that you might develop while you're out of the country, your medical expenses. But also, there would be a limit for lost luggage, delayed luggage. Most policies would cover you for the first 2 or 3 days to go and buy some emergency items. So there's, depending on how much you spend on your travel insurance policy will determine the limit that you would have to get yourself sort of sorted for a day or two, and when your luggage finds you on the River Thames somewhere in the middle of nowhere, France.
Yeah.
so that would be my advice is if you travel internationally, take out a decent travel insurance policy. Don't try and save on travel insurance. I think the most expensive per person travel policy is around 4,000 or 5,000 rand a person, and you really have that peace of mind. And then on top of that. So if your travel insurance is for lost or damaged luggage, it only covers you for 20,000 rand. Your personal all risks insurance is an international insurance coverage. So you would also be able to claim from your South African insurer when you come back to South Africa for the items that you weren't able to replace with your travel insurance.
Okay, that's good to know.
Can I ask you, in terms of burden of proof, Christelle? So you mentioned someone said, there was a Rolex watch. They shouldn't be. I mean, the airlines say to you, don't put jewelry and electronics into your bag. But I mean, you just, a good pair of shoes could set you back 2,500, 3,500 rand. So
Yeah.
do you recommend that people take photographs of the packed stuff before they close up the bag as proof? Would you have to provide receipts? What sort of is the industry norm when it comes to that? Because I foresee
Okay.
claims being rejected because you can't prove that you actually packed that stuff.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Wendy, you and I discussed this so much, but not all insurance policies are created equal.
Yep.
It really depends on where you are insured and what your policy wording says and how long you've been with the insurance company and, how they handle claims. So I can't speak on part of the industry. But what I can say is that is an excellent idea, and I'm going to start including it in my travel insurance notifications as well, because, that if we often accept photographic evidence. So if there's something in the case that the insurers are not prepared to pay out because they want proof of ownership, so whether it is a pair of shoes, often you will have a photograph on Facebook or wherever where you were wearing those shoes. So it doesn't specifically have to be that you have to show that it was in the case. It would be very strange to reject a claim, for something that belongs in a checked-in suitcase.
Yeah.
Because the person can't prove, but then again, as I said, not all policies are created equal.
Okay.
So the normal process that happens, we have a lot of these luggage claims, that's not travel insurance related, a lot. And the normal process, what happens is the policyholder must report it to the airline first.
Okay.
And then if there's no joy, they will come to the insurance company in South Africa, and then we'll say, give us proof of that you have reported it and that they were unable to locate it or that it's damaged beyond repair, and then the insurance policy in South Africa will pay out. But I think there's a wider conversation that needs to take place here. So first of all, when you travel, you book you plan your trip overseas. You normally arrange your medical insurance, your travel insurance. It takes 30 seconds to contact your broker or your insurer and ask, I'm going overseas, I've got 50,000 rands worth of luggage, am I covered? Ask the question before the time. You're spending 100,000 rand plus on a family trip overseas. Take the time to make sure your affairs are in order. And there's another reason why I mention this, because it's not just when you're on the plane. So we received a claim in the last year at AMI where the client went to Italy, very, very well-respected individual, never claims. And he went, he went on a shopping experience.
Yeah.
Went with almost no luggage, bought luggage there, Italian luggage, filled it up with stuff. He had a rental car. On his way back to the airport, he stopped to get something. He was out of his car for a short while. When he came back, the car was emptied out.
Oh, no.
So then he had to go to the Italian police to go and report the issue. There was major problems with language. Unfortunately for him, when he came back to South Africa, he had done all of that. So we had those reports, and you could claim for all that sort of, it was like 200,000.
And he had the receipts, of course, brand new stuff.
He had all the receipts. It's all digital because nowadays we don't get printed receipts anymore. They email it to you, and we were able to settle that claim really quickly. But he did the effort of going to the police and getting, even though it was very difficult, and it made it easy. Other people would just give up, and then we have problems with claims because it wasn't reported as it should be to the police.
Oh, sure. Okay. Crystal, thanks for the heads up on that. Yeah, you only think about the loss through the airline, not what could happen beyond that. Crystal, two people very rapidly in quick succession after each other, Carol and Cameron, asking the same question. Is the travel insurance you get through your medical aid sufficient for medical care abroad?
Depends.
That's a great question. So what I also always do, and I used to run a big travel insurance company, so I understand this in quite great detail. So what you must always do is if you have a medical aid that has an international travel benefit, activate it, because you don't pay for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's there. But it might be that, remember, the medical aid companies also buys travel insurance. So they deal with all the same international medical assist services partners that the insurance companies deal with. And it might be that they only give you 5 million rands worth of emergency medical cover. Now, it depends where you travel as well. Medical expenses in the United States are unbelievably expensive. It's very, very expensive compared to Europe, for instance. And the hospitals there won't even take you into the emergency room if you can't prove that you've got medical insurance. So even, I had a case of someone who had a heart attack, and we, at the insurance company, travel insurance company I worked, we had a system, international money transfer system in place, and we could transfer immediately $340,000 US to get that man into the emergency. He was having heart attack. Now that's what the travel insurance companies do for you. And I would really just pay the extra money, take out the 50 million rand. That's not a hell of a lot cover. It's not very expensive. So do both. Don't mess around with medical expenses when you're overseas, because things go horribly wrong, and then families are they don't know what to do, because the travel insurance companies also, and the medical aids through the travel insurance companies, will then also get those people back to South Africa if they need to get their treatment here, or they will fly their family members from South Africa to go and support their family members in the area where they got injured or fell desperately ill. So it's very valuable insurance, and there's a huge international network that sits behind it. Even if you buy it in South Africa, South African-based insurance companies use international networks to enable these services to happen as they should.
Christelle, thanks for that. We must wrap up, but before we let you go, there is such an important little nugget of not air travel, but road travel advice that you wanted to share with us, specifically relating to what's happening in Mozambique at the moment.
Yeah, I'm absolutely shocked. I really would think 10 times before I go to Mozambique at the moment. All insurance policies, whether it's travel insurance or your motor insurance policy, has got a war and political unrest exclusion in it. So if you decide to go, you don't care. Mozambique, that's the excuse I hear all the time. You know where to go. And you get caught in a riot, and your car is damaged, and you are stuck, your policy won't pay for you to come back, because it is actually an exclusion. And I have every reason to believe that people going into Mozambique are at risk, and it really isn't safe to go right now. I'd rather spend your money in South Africa and do a staycation, and go next year when everything is settled down. That's my advice.
Very good advice.
Christelle Coleman, thanks. Just had to slide that in there to alert anybody who is thinking about that sort of a road trip. And Christelle, thank you so much. Although we invited you to talk mainly about air travel related issues, it's so appreciated that you gave us the heads up on that one. Please, if you are considering any kind of cross-border trip into Mozambique this holiday, be sure you've had a conversation with your insurer about the fact that you are doing that. Do not have a nasty surprise waiting for you about cover being declined because you knowingly went into a situation of political unrest. Christelle Coleman, appreciate your time, CEO of AMI Underwriting Managers. Let me end on a happy note that Keisha has messaged me to say she had a great experience with this. Wendy, she doesn't say which airline it was, but on an international trip, my suitcase was badly damaged, a case worth over 3,500 rand. I put a claim in at the baggage claim, and they replaced the suitcase with an equivalent value, as well as collecting the broken one and delivering the new one to me at home.
I think we need to find out which airline that was. I know I was going to say and come back next week, but we won't.
We'll be back in the new year.
I'd like to know
but
anyway.
Keisha, if you know where to find me on email, Keisha. We correspond regularly, so please won't you just drop me a follow-up mail and share with us which airline that was. I think it would be worth speaking to them about their approach as a comparison to what we've heard today. Thank you. We have to wrap up there, Wendy. It's been another delightful year. Thank you for all of the bulldog-like fighting on behalf of Cape Talk listeners, and wishing you a very restful festive season.
Likewise.
Hopefully a quiet inbox, and we look forward to chatting again in January.
Thanks, Pippa.